You've probably heard of the Prohibition-era criminal who ruled gangs in Chicago from 1925 to 1931 and became the most renowned gangster in the United States. That's right, we're talking about Alphonse Capone. A teenage hoodlum cut Capone with a knife along his left cheek during a strip club brawl, earning Capone the epithet Scarface. However, he is more widely known and referred to as Al Capone. Today we're going to take a look at the life of Al Capone from beginning to the grand finale. Now, if you like these videos and want to see more, then make sure you leave us a like on the video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on post notifications to be the first to watch all our new and exciting videos. I will be replying to every comment on this video as well, so good luck. In 1893, Al Capone's family relocated from Italy to the States for a fresh start at life, taking menial jobs at candy stores and bowling alleys. At the age of 16, Capone joined a notorious group known as the James Street Boys Gang. His parents were ordinary, law-abiding Italian-American citizens, and there were a few clues that the young Capone might wander into the life of crime. During his time in the James Street Boys Gang, Johnny Torrio took a liking to Capone and took him under his wing. Alphonse accompanied Torrio to Chicago and eventually assisted him in running his bootlegging company. His notoriety grew as he employed excessive brutality to maintain his authority, including the public killing of his opponents in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929. This stunt earned him the moniker of Public Enemy #1, and the public outcry grew. People wanted him off the streets and in prison, and the government was finally able to apprehend him for tax evasion in 1931. Before being imprisoned at Alcatraz in 1934, Capone amassed a personal fortune valued at $1 billion as the leader of the famed booze cartel. Godfather Johnny Torrio. Johnny Torrio had the greatest impact on Al Capone's mob life. From the age of 14, Torrio educated Capone about the value of putting on a good face while conducting criminal operations. Torrio, despite his small stature, led a new era in the criminal trade, evolving a viciously brutal lifestyle into a business empire. Torrio, who arrived in Chicago from New York in 1909, helped coordinate the city's massive prostitution enterprise, and in 1920, he dispatched Capone. That year, it was alleged that Capone or Frankie Yale assassinated Torrio's boss, Big Jim Colosimo, paving the way for Torrio's leadership. Anarchy and the Chicago Gangster. When Prohibition began in 1919 following the passage of the 18th Constitutional Amendment, numerous drug-dealing operations sprung up with the aim to earn more money off the illegal alcohol. Torrio stepped down from the throne in 1925, and Capone took over as Chicago's crime czar, overseeing gambling, prostitution, and bootlegging rackets, and expanding his domain by mowing down rivals. Even as Capone's fame rose, he still managed the image of a man of the people. He wasn't lax in his judgment, however. He made sure to travel with at least 1 or 2 bodyguards at all times, and when traveling by car, he did so only at night, with 1 bodyguard on each side of him. Al became Torrio's partner and manager of the Four Deuces, a nightclub, pachinko parlor, and brothel all rolled into one. In Chicago's Levee neighborhood, a crackdown on corruption and racketeering in Chicago caused Capone to relocate his enterprises to Cicero, Illinois. During this time, his brothers Frank Salvatore and Ralph assisted Capone in penetrating the police and government agencies by holding positions in the government of Cicero, as well as helping him in the operation of brothels, casino clubs, and amusement parks. This gave Capone more power. He abducted election officials for his opponents and intimidated electors using assault. He intended on winning the election at any cost, which he did in Cicero.
We're running Cicero!
But not before his brother Frank was slain in a firefight with the Chicago police. Capone took pride in his ability to keep his emotions under control, but when his close friend and colleague Jack Guzik was assaulted by a petty thug, Capone went after the assailant and shot him to death. There was no concrete evidence to tie Al Capone to the murder, and he got away with the crime due to a lack of witnesses. However, the press didn't give up. They hounded the police and brought him the notoriety he always avoided. After a failed attempt at Torrio, the frail man gave Capone his heritage of bars, strip joints, nightclubs, brewery, and speakeasies as a part of his crusade to look clean. This included socializing with the press and being visible in public locations such as the opera. Capone then relocated his headquarters to Chicago's opulent Metropolis Hotel. Capone was not like other gangsters who evaded the public eye. He wanted to be regarded as a respectable businessman and a community pillar. He always dressed neatly, like a wolf in sheep's clothing. creating a smuggling empire. The next task for Al Capone was to smuggle enormous amounts of illegal whiskey into Chicago with Frankie Yale, his old associate in New York. This partnership culminated in the Adonis Club Massacre, where Capone had Yale's opponents brutally attacked during a Christmas celebration. This further enhanced Capone's flamboyant lifestyle as a gangster, but Billy McSwiggan, also known as the hanging prosecutor, proved to be a severe setback for the unstoppable mobster. McSwiggan was mistakenly shot and killed by Capone's thugs during a battle between rivals outside a pub. Capone was implicated in the case, but he couldn't be tied to the murder due to a lack of evidence. The murder, however, did fuel public hate for the mafia and led to high-profile investigations into Al Capone's business affairs. As a result, offers frequently raided his brothels and gambling dens. He eventually made the risky but calculated decision to turn himself over to Chicago police. It turned out to be the right decision, though, because the authorities lacked enough evidence to charge him. Capone was free again, making a mockery of the police and the legal system in the process. Peace and murder. Capone strangely assumed the role of a peacemaker, instructing other gangsters to refrain from fights and skirmishes.
Now fighting.
He even attempted to broker an agreement among rival criminals, resulting in a 2-month halt to the slaughter. However, criminals ruled Chicago, and Capone appeared to be above the law. Rival gangsters' infighting swiftly erupted into street violence, and repeated hijackings of Capone's whiskey shipments quickly became a serious concern. Yale was a significant thorn in Capone's side. He was a formidable associate, but he was now viewed as the primary driver of interruptions to Capone's whiskey business. Yale was killed with the first use of a Tommy gun, which happened on a sunny Sunday afternoon. Ironically, it was the tax collectors who represented the greatest threat to the criminals' bootlegging business. In May of 1927, the Supreme Court ruled that a bootlegger must pay income tax on his illegal bootlegging activity. It didn't take long after the court ruling for the IRS's Special Intelligence Unit, directed by Elmer Ira, to make a go at Al Capone. Convictions. On March 13, 1931, a federal jury met in private to hear the administration's claim that Scarface underpaid $32,488.81 in taxes. The jury returned an indictment against Capone, although the investigation was kept under wraps for years until they had enough evidence to charge him with tax evasion. A grand jury eventually convicted Capone on 22 counts of tax evasion worth over $200,000. Capone and 68 of his associates were charged with 5,000 distinct Volstead Act violations. These income tax infractions were given precedence over prohibition violations. Capone's lawyers and federal prosecutors established an unspoken understanding that Capone was to enter a guilty plea to a lesser felony and face a prison sentence of 2 to 5 years instead of going down for everything they could pin on him. When the news broke, the press was outraged and initiated a campaign to sensationalize what they saw as a clear cover-up. Capone, who was initially confident that he would spend less than 5 years in prison, became less cocky when he realized his plea deal had been rendered null and void. Capone was escorted to the federal court building by 14 detectives on October 6, 1931. Capone's men planned on collecting a list of jury members to bribe, but Capone was unaware that the authorities were in on the operation. When Judge Wilkinson entered the courtroom, he requested that the jury be substituted with a different jury from the same building. Capone and his lawyer were stunned. The reconstituted jury was even locked up at night to prevent the Capone gang from gaining access to them. Attorney George E.Q. Johnson stressed Capone's dishonesty even during trial, depicting him as a man who spent thousands of dollars on meals and luxuries, yet provides little to the hungry and destitute. He mocked Capone's claim to be a Robin Hood figure and a common man. After 9 hours of deliberation, the jury found Capone guilty on many counts of tax evasion on October 17, 1931. Judge Wilkinson sentenced him to 11 years in prison, $50,000 in fines, and an additional $30,000 in court fees with bail denied. Incarceration and death. Before his death, the New York Times described Al Capone as the icon of a horrible era, making Capone's tale appear as a near-perfect case study in terms of the arrival of the gangster culture in Chicago during the Prohibition era. In August of 1934, Capone was transported from an Atlanta prison to the famed Alcatraz prison in San Francisco. His imprisonment privileges had been revoked, and his communication with the outside world was cut off. Capone's term was reduced to 6.5 years for good behavior. On January 25, 1947, Capone died from a heart attack at the age of only 48. During his final years in prison, he was afflicted with syphilis, which caused him to deteriorate gradually after he escaped from his Palm Island residence. May, his wife, stood by his side till the end. If you enjoyed watching the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to be notified whenever we release new content. Until next time, have a good one.